Okay, I don't know what happened, but we'll try this again. We're back from the baseball deadline special earlier this afternoon. Plenty of trades, including, I don't know if you've heard about this one yet, Jesse, but we are talking about Carlos Correa back to the Astros from Minnesota. Minnesota gives up $33 million. Astros give up a 26-year-old left-hander from Single A. You want to talk about getting fleeced? That's more than one way. But another big team, the Mets, they cleaned up a little bit themselves. They're holding on for dear life right now. Right behind. Come on. Stupid recording.
What happened?
Yeah, it's
What
saying
happened?
recording error, but it's still going.
Let's just
Okay.
go with it. I'll check out
No,
and
if it's
see.
still going, that's fine. But the Mets cleaned up pretty well. The White Sox, they're 29 under, but that's a vast improvement. They're doing better. They're not 52 under like the Rockies are right now. The Cubs, they're still in the playoff hunt. This is going from trade deadline to playoff race baseball. August 1st to September 1st, the next month of days is going to be big baseball for these folks here. If they know, they already know it, and the heart is pounding right here. But we're going to talk about teams today a little bit because it's trade deadline, and hey, I love you too, but please don't give him the camera shot, okay? Yeah. My assistant general manager, ladies and gentlemen.
What's that
Okay.
camera attention?
That's my kitty. It's my kitty. But as I was saying before, the cat wanted pets. We're going to talk about teams today and the good and the bad that's gone on. I'm going to go with the biggest additions so far. I'm going to start off with Kurt and the biggest takeaways for him for the Mets from the trade deadline.
Well, first one is Cedric Mullins, which, and also the most recent one. It was almost a surprise as who they didn't get because they were in the talking with the White Sox about Luis Robert Jr. That didn't happen. My understanding is the reason was the White Sox were asking for too much in return. So the Mets instead spin it over to Mullins, his career track's not similar to Robert's. He's had one real great year and a lot of okay years. The difference is Mullins is a rental. His contract ends at the end of the year, so they did not give up a whole lot for him. I'm looking at ESPN right now, if my computer were working accurately, and they gave the Mets a B for that trade. They also picked up from the Cardinals I think it's Ryan Helsley, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And a couple of other guys as well. So they got some bullpen help, which they needed. I think they would have loved to have gotten another starter, but I don't think they were willing to give up too much in order to do so. The Mets may be a little gun shy on some of these trades. As you remember, a couple of years ago, they traded Pete Crow Armstrong, who admittedly had only batted maybe a few dozen times for the organization, for about 2 months of Javier Baez's company. So I think you don't want to take a chance of giving away somebody who's going to wind up being a superstar. So on the whole, I think they did okay. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, no, I like the fact that they cleaned up quite a bit. Today seemed to be like the day that every bullpen just said, hey, let's go shopping. Let's sell everything. It's a yard sale. Unless you're a Twins fan.
It never hurts to have more arms, and it's easier to find arms, bullpen arms, than it is starting rotation arms.
And you're right about that. Today was an arms race if I've ever seen one. Jesse, I'll let you talk about your Astros because I have a feeling the Astros, they needed pitching help badly, and they needed help where they needed it the most, and they got it with this trade deadline.
Yeah, they got Carlos Correa back, and then we got a utility infielder from the Orioles, Urias, and then we got a trade. We got an outfielder from the Astros. Let's see, who did we get?
believe his name was Jesus Sanchez.
Yeah, Jesus Sanchez. For the right-handed Ryan Gusto, infielder Chase Jawalski. He says number 13 prospect per MLB pipeline, and outfielder Esmael Valencia. So the Astros did pretty good this year. And they got Carlos Correa for next to nothing.
I think the absolute world of general managers, but that is the biggest mistake that the Twins GM could have made. They only paid $33 million, but they got a single A prospect for that. I think the Astros, deservingly so this time, will have a better player playing third base. That's not named Alex Bregman, at least. Okay. I'm going to go over to the first of the Chicago, to the north side and south side. I'm going to go with Josh this time because the Cubs, they made quite a few changes of their own, creative changes.
Okay, from what I'm seeing here, I'm on Cubs.com right now taking a look at it. We did DFA Ryan Presley, which is kind of strange to me to do that. We also DFA'd who did we DFA? I just lost it. But yeah, the DFA of Ryan Presley was kind of strange to me because I would have given him more work. But we did acquire Willie Castro, another pitcher reliever. Let's see who else we picked up here. We picked up Mike Soroka, former White Sox, back in the bullpen. And let's see here. What else do I see? Those are the two big ones that I saw most recently today, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because when you look at somebody's stats, it's kind of hard. I'm one of those people that want to see the player for myself before I make any judgment.
See, and I like that about certain people. They passed the eye test. And that was the thing with Scotts for years. It's just like, oh, did they pass the eye test? Are they handsome? Are they ugly? Do they have a girlfriend? Are they married? Do they have kids? Just like, don't worry about their private life. As long as they don't have somebody hiding in their closet while their wife's at home, you're fine. But good God. Okay. Now that I've gone through the three big ones here, I'm going to go over to the south side here with Brandon. I know the White Sox didn't do much, but they made a bit of a splash now with they're going to win at least 60 games this season, 60 or more at this rate. So let's see.
I think they are going to win more than 60 games this year. I could definitely see like 66, 67 at this point. They've played really well ever since the All-Star break ended. We just took 2 out of 3 from Philadelphia. But anyway, now into the trade deadline news. The big talk with the White Sox is, are they going to trade Luis Robert? We did not. We kept him. We were asking too much. Teams were asking for too much. The Mets were in there. I know the Phillies were in there. I know several other teams were looking for his services, and none of them got him. But we did trade the one player that I thought that was going to be out, and that was Adrian Hauser. We traded Adrian Hauser to the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for Curtis Mead and 2 right-handed pitching prospects in Duncan Davitt and Ben Peoples. Curtis Mead, let's talk about him. He's been up at the major league level already. He's played 111 games spread out through 3 major league seasons, batting .238, .307 slugging, .322 on base. While rotating between first, second, and third base. So he's played a lot in the infield. He was a top 100 prospect for 3 years running. He was number 33 before the 2023 season. AAA, he was hitting a lot better. So maybe we might send him back down to AAA and he might become another Miguel Vargas type of player. So we'll see what happens with him. And, Davitt is 25 years old. He's been in AAA. So is Ben Peoples. He's been in AAA as well. So, we'll see what happens with these 2 guys. We did trade Austin Slater over to the Yankees. But other than that, it was definitely a much less quieter deadline for the White Sox than I thought it would be. I mean, I just don't think that this core right now is ready to like can win on a consistent basis. But what I've seen from the All-Star break onward is, it's promising. And Colson Montgomery's been on fire too, and I've been really impressed with how he's been going.
That's all you can really hope for, because at this point in the season right now, they have almost as many wins now as they did the entire last season combined. Pretty much. One more win, and they've already won as many games as they did last year. But for all the teams going around now, there was players who didn't get traded. Specifically, one of them was Dylan Cease. And again, this is the eye test, the stat test. Dylan Cease, pitching for a team that's in second place in the NL West, he hasn't been getting much run support at all from his Padres team, who also pretty much cleaned house. They required the Ramon Laureano and Ryan O'Hearn to work on their offense. But when your best pitcher is 3-10, has an ERA almost 5, you have someone there who should have wanted him. That's why when I look at Boston today, and Boston making the Dustin May trade, they did better doing that than going after Joe Ryan. I'm not saying the Twins, who traded away 10 players today, are going to be worse for wear, but their returns better be worth what they traded away. Because the biggest mistake trade I thought of today was going to be Carlos Correa, but it's not. And David, no, I'm not ashing Breslow for this trade, but the Steven Matz trade. Steven Matz has been in St. Louis for 4 seasons now, made $11 million a year, and he's only made 38 starts out of his 84 appearances in the Cardinal Red. He got traded for a 22-year-old prospect with big pop named Blaze Jordan.
He's going to be good.
Guy too. Yeah. Big bat for a big guy. He can play the infield. He can also DH when it comes to that future. But I'm not trading a 34-year-old Steven Matz. I'm not trying to get a 34-year-old pitcher for a 22-year-old. I know parades over prospects. Here's the problem. If you can't make it to the big dance, you can't have a parade for the big dance. That's why trade deadline, draft day, all of those 3 come together in October. That's why you got to be sure. That's why the Mets went and picked up who they picked up. That's why the Cubs went and got bullpen help and infield help. That's why Chicago is improving. They're not pushing their future down the road. And then the Astros, they have Jeremy Pena on the IL because he just got injured. They have Mauricio Dubon and Zach Short. When Pena comes back in a couple of days, they'll be better off because now they have a third baseman not named Isaac Paredes who can actually play third base and is healthy. Every one of these teams here made their push for the playoffs. Now, I'm going to ask you guys, and Brandon, I'm going to include you because I have a feeling the White Sox will make a playoff push next season, at least get close. But first, I'm going to start with Jesse. How far do you think your team is going? This is now pretty much closing the book on July 31st. We're headed towards August, the dog days of summer. Where do you think your team is going to end up in the playoffs, and do you think they're going to make it as far as you feel they are? Jesse, I'll start with you. Houston made a few trades. How far do you see them going with them leading the division over the Mariners right now?
I think they'll make it to the second round of the playoffs. It's just that lately we just haven't been doing well in the point. We had a playoff exit last year. It's just we've been losing a lot of key players. Our bullpen's been depleted due to injuries. We just got McCullers back, and he's still trying to find his himself. So I'm guessing maybe the second round or possibly a World Series, but I'm not gonna hold my breath for the Astros.
See, that's an honest man right there, and I like that. He has faith in his team, but he knows there's going to be some drawbacks, some false starts with their team in the playoffs. I like that analysis. Thank you, Jesse. Kurt, you're up next. How far do you think the Mets are going to go after all those moves they made today?
Mets made it to the NLCS last year, and honestly, I see them going there again this year. They're weak in a few spots. I would have loved to have seen them pick up another bat, but on the other hand, I don't know where you put that other bat unless maybe Eugenio Suarez somehow miraculously went over there. But I guess the Mets figure they already have enough third basemen and they really don't need another one on top of that. The issue is for this year right now, the Mets actually have the best home record in the league. I'm looking at the standings right now. They are in the best record in the majors for a home team. They're 37-16. But you know what? That means they're 25-31 on the road. I'm hoping they'll turn that around a little bit. But honestly, I think this might either be Milwaukee or Chicago's year to make it to the World Series.
I like that incentive that that either one of those teams can make it. I honestly thought the Mets had their year last year where they were going to beat LA and make it to the World Series. I thought last year was going to be their year, but some things change, some things don't. I don't think the Dodgers are going to make it
last year by how things turned out for the Mets, but if they make it only to the NLCS this year, the fan base isn't going to be quite as thrilled. I don't think they're as World Series or nothing oriented as the Yankee fans, but they're expecting a little more this year, I would think. We'll see.
I like that, though. You know that there's other teams that are just as good as the Mets are, and it's not World Series or bust. It's get over the hump first and then get to the big one, if that's the way it's got to be. Josh, I'm going to do you last because I know the Cubs are getting there, but they have to fight their way for their right to play in the playoffs.
Yes, they do, and I'll get to that in a minute.
Yes. For the White Sox now, I know they aren't going to the playoffs this year, Brandon. But this is not a hypothetical thing. This is putting together one step at a time and pushing and knocking on the Twins. You knock on that door and you say, we're moving up. You tell the Tigers and the Royals, we're moving up. Next year could be better. Where do you see them going?
Here's the thing. I don't think people realize how weak the American League truly is, especially this season. It's the weakest it's been in I don't know how many years. The AL Central has been weak for many years at this point. The Tigers are leading the division by what, like 14, 15 games? The Twins just sold off basically all of their big players except Byron Buxton. The Guardians are really not going anywhere this year. The Royals aren't doing anything this year. You know, if the Sox can continue to build off this momentum that we've gotten ever since the end of the All-Star break, and if our prospects just, come into their own, again, Colson Montgomery's been playing great. If Kyle Teal can continue to hit the ball, if Edgar Cuero can continue to hit the ball, Tim Elko, all these guys, like if, we can end the year again with like 66, 67 wins, I have a lot of optimism going into next season. Now, granted, are we going to be a playoff team in 2026? I don't think so. I still think we're maybe a year or two away, especially with, Noah Schultz still yet to come up, Hagen Smith still yet to come up, Braden Montgomery still hasn't come up yet. And just if we can, just light a fire under Luis Roberts' butt or something, since we're keeping him now, I think 2027 is when we could see this team back in the playoffs again with this core of guys.
After his baseball in 2027.
I like that.
Oh, if there is, with the lockout looming.
Yeah, that makes a good point because next season is going to be tough for a lot of teams now because I think that last Soto signing with the $765 million kind of pissed off owners just a little bit because now the threat of a salary cap and I hoped for it in football because of the whole Mahomes thing with his $500 million contract, but I hope there's baseball in 2026, and for the future, but not with Manfred as commissioner. It's going to be another lockout, more than likely. But I'll get back to the topic at hand. Josh, your Cubs, second place now. Milwaukee caught up them Brew Crew guys. Let's see what you have in store.
Okay, here's what I'm thinking. After watching the games after the All-Star break, we're having to claw our way back to that first place spot because of the pesky Brewers. But here's why: I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of hitters go cold. Seiya Suzuki's gone cold. Dansby Swanson's gone cold. Pete Crow Armstrong in the last Milwaukee game was making really. I don't want to call it egregious, but I'll use the word. It's stuff that should be easy baseball, but he was having trouble in Milwaukee finding that wall in center field and making those catches. That's going to cost us in the long run. So if we have to claw our way up, I hope we get to at least the first round of the playoffs, but I'm not being optimistic here. We just have to see how it plays out because each game is different, and they've had to struggle for it since the All-Star break, and they've struggled hard for it.
I think this season, especially, and I think Brandon's right, the American League is the weakest it's been since the 1980s. And that's saying something because the last major strike that was in 1994 was 1981, where it was split into two separate seasons. And this is something that I don't like that the minor leagues do. Whoever wins in the first half gets their playoff spot. Whoever wins in the second half of the season gets their playoff spot. Don't do that crap.
No.
Don't do that. That I'm against. Now that we've talked about this stuff, I'm going to let this guy right here. He wants a little bit of time to talk. So, David.
So, basically, I want to say about two things. First, MLB on Fox, you decided to have a leaked draft tweet public for all Red Sox fans to see for a couple minutes about Joe Ryan, getting acquired to the Red Sox. That was full crap, man. You guys have made my list because you never do that. Trick fans like that of a trade that I thought was actually happened because I trust MLB on Fox. But no, they decided to prank Boston and just decided to, think that we actually got Joe Ryan, but in reality, we did not. So, to that admin on MLB on Fox, you've just made my list. I'll say that appropriately. But the other thing I want to say, I'm glad that we got at least an extra arm in the bullpen. Yet not much, proposal for us to accept that as a big trade, as it were, because we unfortunately had to get rid of Blaze Jordan, who I really liked, watching him grow up in Portland going into Worcester. But then again, we do need extra help in the bullpen with Liam Hendricks down and all that, and also with the future. So we'll see what happens with that. And let's see who else. Dustin May. I'm glad we actually got an extra starting pitcher because that's what we needed as well. But Dustin May, I watched him. When I watched the games of the Dodgers, he has decent experience, pitching wise, but with his past injury, history, that's what concerns me a little bit. But if he's younger and better than Joe Ryan, then I'll take it. But actually, I want to say to Craig Breslow, you could do way better than this. You have all the money in the world, and for the past 2 years, you've been mediocre at the trade deadline. At least you did something valuable this year than last year, and also we kept our key players. They not trade traded away Kevin Durant because that would have been the end of it. But still, just remember for next year, just do something that the Red Sox did 20 years ago. You know what that was? Spending money. And back in 2021 is a great example. We got Kyle Schwarber and other pieces, and guess what? We went to the championship round. So that's all I have to say. I'm glad that we got some help and at least one trade today, but still, it just made me miserable just waiting for something to happen. Not like the old school days where we spent all this money, but Sean Henry doesn't want to spend it anymore. That's all I have to say.
Okay. So, in the next couple minutes, I'm not really going to talk much about this topic, but my prediction now for these guys and where their teams are going for their future in general. Boston will finish in the second wild card if they keep it up. The Cubs will have a dogfight ahead of them. They will either win the division or have that stupid 3-game playoff to deal with. Whatever happens is going to happen, and they are their own. They control their own destiny. For Houston, they just have to keep the Mariners and the Rangers behind them for the rest of the season, and they'll make it to the playoffs regardless. For the Mets, Philadelphia is not their biggest threat right now. The second Philly slips even a little bit, the Mets will be right back in this because they don't have any other teams to worry about except for themselves and Philly. It's just going to be those two teams going on, and I have a feeling the Mets are going to make the playoffs regardless, but they're going to have to work for it like they have before. And if Soto wants to actually get off his butt and do something about it, I'm sure fans will like him better for it. But the Mets will make the playoffs. For the White Sox, I think within the next season or two, they will be ready. They will be ready. It doesn't take much. But when a team trades away just about every asset they have, I think the Twins are going to go through a rebuild. And that's going to hurt them the most. Because they trade away Duran, they trade away Varland, and Baltimore is going through the rebuild phase too. My biggest problem is this. If you're still close, try for a piece or two. The Twins are only 9 games under 500 at 50 and 59. They blew it up. Why the hell are you blowing it up when you're only 9 games under 500? Oh, my God. They're making Florida and Miami from the late 90s, early 2000s seem like they're geniuses now. And that was Jeffrey Loria. I'm sure the Mets were thanking him every single day that time, but Jesus Christ, what is wrong with these owners and general managers? I'm sorry. I'll be nice. At least the Mets have a competent one. The White Sox owner's a jag-off just because Michael Jordan made him look good, same with Scottie Pippen. But now that we're at this point, Chicago lost a legend this week, folks. The number 23 means a lot in Chicago. It wasn't just for Michael Jordan. It meant a lot because of Ryne Sandberg. Ryne Sandberg was fighting cancer for the longest time. Unfortunately, the big man up in the sky said, I need Rhino to play second base for my future. So, Ryne Sandberg, you were a great Cub. Yes, you had some stuff happen that though you had under your control, but you were a great second baseman. And just for the last about 15 seconds or so, I'd like to have a moment of silence if possible, if you guys want. Okay. Thank you all for this week, for the trade deadline, and I hope you guys enjoy the next 65, 70 games or so, because this is where the game goes from not being called a marathon anymore. It's now a sprint. Tie your shoelaces, wear your best running shoes, because it's all downhill from here for certain teams, and sometimes it's a long way to the top. This is the weekly baseball rundown. Our deadline is passed, and we're ready for the future. Good night, everybody. Thank you again for coming on. Have a good night.